I think I'll die in this town. 2 decades ago, that sentence was sort of a badge of pride, but now it's a trap. I escaped my hometown, came back by choice, and watched people here get stuck and escape. So today I wanted to talk about it. This is why some people never leave their hometown in 5 different steps. And as I mentioned, it is pretty interesting. Like, I managed to escape my hometown just to wind up eventually coming back on my own choice within like a year or two. So why do so many people in my generation end up back, but most importantly, never end up having the opportunity to make it out? I know you're thinking about numerous different things like being comfortable, having family or work opportunities, but honestly, it's none of those things specifically. There might be a few of the reasons, but they're not the biggest ones. And if anything, some of those ways can relate in negative ways more than positive. So to begin, let's talk about how I ended up here, as I wasn't born in my hometown, which is kind of funny to say, but you know, I've spent my entire teenage years and up to like my mid-20s in a small town, so I've spent most of my grown-up life here. But when I was born in the city, so I know a little bit of both sides. Let me get into the first step though, the poverty cycle. Growing up, whether you're in a small town or not, the poverty cycle can stunt your personal, educational, and financial development. Pretty much any way you developed, it's nerfed. You picked the game on hard mode, you're on Iron Man, it's not easy, dude. When I grew up, the longest my family stayed somewhere and we got to like live somewhere was for maybe about 2 years, so I always went to new schools, like sometimes multiple times a year growing up. Now this led to me not having any personal friends from my childhood who I still talk to or even know for most of this day. You know, most of them have faded in memory. Like I can't even remember their names because I was so young. And in general, a lack of community has always been a problem, but it becomes a bigger problem in a small town. You get into lots of problems in neighborhoods left alone, but small towns, they're a different type of breed. There's something about small towns where like everybody has like a stick up their ass that makes them like need to whisper the last names of other people and spread rumors or talk about other families that live down the street, and it's always about the most meaningless things. Now, if you're lucky to get through school and say you get to college or you get out of that environment, a lot of the times it still becomes more complicated. For myself, I got expelled in grade 10, so I was not one of those guys, but that's a story for another time. Anyways, it left me pursuing work full-time early on in my life, starting at about 16. Then about a year later, when I was 17, my girlfriend got pregnant and forcing my need to work even more. But I didn't really have time to educate myself. I didn't really have time to seek out a better job, and the job opportunities in my town were not very good. So the poverty cycle is rough, you know, it doesn't just make things harder for you, it completely rewires all of your options. Instead of trying to figure out like a budget or say plan, you don't really plan, you just survive. That gets me into the next point, being social circles. As I got older, I kind of noticed my family was getting a bit worse. They were less supportive as the years went on. Some of them got more addicted, more dependent on each other, and a lot on me as I grew up. Right now, I'm like the youngest person in my family who can work, and I make more money than everyone else in my family. Well, to be fair, pretty much I think only one of them holds a stable job right now, but the competition isn't steep, okay? My family ain't one of the greats to say the least, but even at my best, it's held me back in numerous ways. Some quick stories I can remember are things like most of my friends easily dropping contact with me once I got expelled, as most of them only knew me for like a year or two at that point. And even if we did go on to like finish high school, what's supposed to happen, you know? Like they know me for 4 years that we're gonna keep up. I mean, life hits us all, and I think everybody can agree. We don't talk to pretty much 90% of the people we grew up with and talk to on a regular basis. And when you're from a small town, meeting people can be one of the most expensive things of all, as there's nothing to do, very little work opportunities, and if you do go out, it's somewhere to like, you know, a pub or the same spot in town that's usually fairly costly. There's not a lot of options, and to top it off, growing up, missing out on school trips, skipping meals, and having points where like we didn't really have hydro or different bills paid, it naturally led to like lots of situations where people just didn't want to hang out with me. Like no one's coming over to my house, we don't got light bulbs. So I think in those types of situations, you just have to grow up fast and take it as it is. And while a few lucky kids might have gotten big with things like cryptocurrency, selling courses, or drop shipping, I didn't. I just had to work minimum wage part-time and suck it up. And in general, you guys know the struggle, I'm sure too. You got rent, you got gas to get to work, you got your food, your technology tax, all the other things that we have to upkeep. It basically just turns all of our paychecks into ways to survive and not progress, which is very disheartening. Something like seeing a friend and hanging out for a night can literally cost 1/10 of your check, and cutting those bad friends off as well when you don't have many good ones can be very difficult. But if you don't have a good social circle in a small town, you kind of run out of options. There's no new streets to go to, there's no new clubs, like you pretty much know everybody in your community. I remember I got to a point personally where I just felt like everybody hated me, and I kind of like hated everybody other than my son. It was a really negative time, and the only way to get through it and be more positive and get back grounded to reality was for me to work, was for me to make money and get out of this, because life is stagnant when you're living it, whether it's in a small town or through a screen. But for the first side, there just aren't many job opportunities for most people in small towns, and when there are, they go fast, with winter cutting hours, and another key factor, of course, being children. Generation Z has a lot of single parents, and for people like myself, you'll naturally try to stay in positive relationship with the mother for the reason of seeing the child easily. When I moved away from my town, it wasn't that far, it was about a 2-hour commute. But this was, one, expensive, but also timely on both ends. It made planning, organizing pickups, everything, almost a full day long mission instead of just a quick time event like everyone in that situation wants it to be. This led to some tension with my child's mother. I remember at one point I wasn't really able to pick him up due to the weather being so bad, and she proposed the solution of me relinquishing parental rights. Like, who is she talking about that with, bro? I don't want to know, All I knew is that I was going to go and get my money up. I'm sending her some, and I'm likely going to move back to town, because at that rate, it's not going to cut it, This isn't going to last for long. I'm very lucky, though, as my full-time job with YouTube lets me move my business easily anywhere, but I have a very unique path. Most people don't really get to experience that or have that option. But on the flip side, I grew up with my computer. I didn't really go outside, as there wasn't anything to go outside for near me. But I made the most out of it, and this led me down a fortunate route. I developed an interest in YouTube, and while I never had consistent friends, I always had YouTube videos throughout my life. Leveraging that, I created content as a child, teen, and young adult all the way up until now, where I finally got to the point where I am. I was lucky and mostly did this through video game related content, as I didn't have a farm or, like anything much interesting that you could cover in the countryside. But social circles aside, I think the fear of risk is a big reason. This is where I stood out from almost all of the high school peers I once sat in classes with. While most of them went on to get local jobs, and a lot of them genuinely seemed scared to leave, I think there's some pretty valid reasons for that. To begin, if you're lucky in a small town, you usually have a family or other safety nets to rely on. This usually means easier transportation, housing, and in just general, lifestyle. Lots of kids get out of high school, they go to college, and they don't like the lifestyle of having to take care of themselves on campus, it leads to them coming back home. And can you even blame them, bro? We're in like 2026 simulation land. When you go to the city and like you go to a college or university from a small town, you're just surrounded by basically like Tyler Oliveira thumbnails on every street. Why would you want to live or work there? It's also the cost of most apartments in the cities. Like, you look at the size of them, and in general, the living conditions are just so much different and shittier than where you live in the countryside. You're able to go hunting during hunting season. Most people in the countryside either have huge yards or access to forest and huge fields. You have farms everywhere and things to make them want to stay. And I think those are very valid reasons, and when they work in your favor, they can lead to some of the next leaders in small town communities, which every town needs in its own way. But developing this naturally is difficult. The city can be a scary place, especially for people who've never grown up there or experienced nicer parts of it. And then there's also the other side. Let's just say, there isn't a whole lot going on right now, with gambling, weed shop deliveries, and OnlyFans models accessible from your phone. Why do you even need to go to the city anymore? You could sit at like a 3-screen monitor setup, get mega baked, hidden blinkers while spinning slots, and checking out your favorite model on OF called Pink Clam. It's a baller, dude. You don't need to go outside anymore. I'm joking, obviously, but I feel like there's a reality to that joke, like a lot of guys do kind of like live that type of lifestyle. And while it's a very extreme side, the amount of guys that are actually mentally fried by the fear of taking real risk, conquering moderation, and navigating lustful desires is becoming higher and higher in my generation. Which gets me into my next point, which is called isolation simulation. I'm going to start this off with a story to kind of begin where this mindset comes from. This one time I was hanging out with my buddy, and this is like one of my best friends at the time in high school. This is also like one of the last times I think I really hung out with him because I realized his brain was beyond gone at this point. I was talking to him about some real stuff, some business, work stuff, maybe the kid as well. You know, we were having a boy talk. And boys were talking about real stuff. But I noticed, this conversation kind of sucked. He starts to casually scroll through his phone through TikTok. And as I was talking to him, he was talking to me. And while it was on TikTok, it was on some chick, like dancing to a song. It was one of those videos that was like obviously not for safe work vibe. But I'm talking to him and he's looking straight at a TikTok while I'm talking to him. Then when I finish, he looks back up, to like kind of talk back and reply. And then when I start talking again, he's like eyes right back of a chick on the screen. And I just snapped. I stood up and I said, brother, you are fried. Like, this is so bad. I was like laughing at him, pointing at him. I was like, you've had that video open for like 2 minutes. It's been replaying like 10 times. It's at least 7 seconds. That's over a minute long. You're just chilling, watching the same dance. What is wrong with you? And we were laughing about it, moved it along, didn't make a big deal about it. But I was being real, dude. This is my buddy. This is my boy, okay? I know my boy don't dance. So why is he studying this video of a chick dancing so intensely? Like, why is his brain doing this? And since then, it's only gotten worse. Like, that was in 2020. Short content, doom scrolling, and all that type of stuff is just a normal thing in my generation to do as a pastime after work. And there's other factors as well. I feel like online gambling has never felt more in my face than when I was in school. I remember it being frowned upon. And now, if I want to have a home, it's advertised to me like I need to like spin slots on a certain new gambling site that I have no interest in. The majority of my generation seems to be falling for these things and not in moderation. Many of us are falling for it in harmful amounts, which impact the real lives and relationships that we have. For small towns, you can't just hop on Tinder or a dating app, as usually you know everyone on it, and options are very limited. Not like those are good options either, but the level of access is much higher when you're not in a small town. And then you take even lighter means of entertainment, like video games. It become filled with addictive practices, and some are just landfill mines for progress locked behind microtransactions. You can't even like play video games with your friends in real life anymore. It's all based off doing it online or like in a Discord call, and for the most part, majority of my friends I know are from very niche games that in real life, my friends don't even know those games that I play. And I think something that really summarizes it is the sentence of everyone has their vices, but in a small town, it isn't as easy as going to a museum when there isn't one to go to. I feel like it also correlates with like naturally your friend group barely wants to watch movies in the theater because there isn't a fucking movie theater, it's 100 miles away. Most of us are watching like Netflix or YouTube like I did, so it just leads to more diverse and naturally isolating watching habits. The friends I do have that I talk to, like I said, they come from mostly online communities, but it's always also too like centered around the games that we're playing. It's always a relationship built from a very niche interest. Very rarely now is it because, oh, we both saw the new Spider-Man movie and that was a good icebreaker. That's not enough anymore. I think the cultural connection over media has completely shifted, and now it's turned to relatable TikToks and dropping likes on each other's posts. Life goes by so slowly, but also so fast during this time of social media. So it's no surprise, just lots of people end up in spirals of addiction, drinking, gambling, or any of other numerous things that hold us back as a society. I think we're all chasing dopamine in different ways, but some are far more destructive than others. So you need to be careful when picking your vices. But honestly, I don't think it's all bad, not only for myself, but for a few others that I know. These are the shiny Pokemon of the small towns. You know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the generation that takes financial planning seriously. To start on the bright side, some of us are leveraging our small town lifestyle to our advantage. It isn't all bad. Coming from subletting, which was really rough, my first priority was just finding a cheap apartment with my girlfriend, and this took us over 2 years to find. We have some nightmare stories from some viewings and things that I can get into another time, but the apartment that we did get was very nice and we were blessed. fast. It was within our budget, it was actually cheaper than what we were paying to sublet at the time, and once an opportunity came up, we took it. Now, having housing security and a more stable environment, we decided in the future, we probably do want to own homes. Our place is nice, but we'd rather our money go to a mortgage for a home than opposed to renting forever. And myself, I'm like very early in the financial literacy journey. I know very little about it, and I am starting very late at almost my mid-20s, but there's things like the first home savings plans that I didn't know about. And lots of banks around the world have systems like this that we can save up through and use to leverage against society for ourselves. And because of this, we don't know how long we'll really stay in our current place, It could be a couple years, could be more than that, but right now, we're just focused on the important stuff, furthering our education, our skill sets, and our careers. And all of those can be done at home on the computer, which is a blessing in its own right. But on the other side, there's the retirement savings account. I'm going to go a little bit financial in this. I'm not an advisor, of course, but I want to show you guys something that like my bank kind of like broke down to me and showed me. So now if you start saving at the age of 25, you're starting a little bit late. You're saving at 25, you're going to do $600 a month for 40 years. I know that sounds like a lot, but $600 a month, really, that's not that much for 40 years on average. You should be able to like at least save a little bit of that or make it a goal to be able to save $600 a month. Either way though, if you do that for 40 years, you'll be age 65 by the time you retire. And by then you'll have a retirement fund. Now that fund will be worth almost $1 million based on a 5% rate of return, which is fairly low on average. I'm using the RBC RSP calculator. It's just one of a random bank calculators that I found online. You can use any of these. I recommend you use the one for your bank or like whoever you're going through and actually talk to somebody about the plan that you're going with. But just to break it down for like, simple, you don't have to save $1 million. At this rate, in 40 years, if you only save $600 a week, you actually only ended up saving $288,000. So that means that your $288,000 is the money that you invested. The rest of it is the amount that you made from interest, and that equals up to $627,612 based on subtracting how much we put into the account compared to the amount we earn with long-term interest. $600 a month isn't even the max that you can put in for yearly contributions, and there's so many more ways to strategically make your money work for you. Oh man, it gets my blood pumping just thinking about it. I gotta go read one of my finance books again. I got a few new ones that I'm starting, but I do want to recommend you guys some books that I've read from start to finish, and all three of them also have amazing audio books. I listen to the audio versions as well when I'm at the gym. These are some of my favorite books that I listen to off and on for the past few years. I want you to check out The Richest Man in Babylon. It's a really good old, kind of culture story. Rich Dad, Poor Dad is a bit more modern, but a very good story and very good telling. And The Wealthy Barber. It's a little bit more based to like Canadians and stuff, but it is very cool. It's basically about how a barber became wealthy by smart investing and saving. Those are my three favorite. If you guys have any good recommendations, leave them down in the comment section below. I love to know your favorite finance book. But even with the traditional education tools we have at our disposal, we have the power of the internet. Like everything around us we can use whenever we'd like now. And once you get into financial planning, it becomes another genre of content. You begin to look for mentors, you study it, you try to educate yourself about it. And honestly, I find like enjoyment similar to the workout content or self-improvement videos that I got into a few years ago. So all in all, if you're making the smart decisions, you can end up staying in your small town for whether it be a few extra years to your whole life, but still end up very successful. I think it's all based on comfort and what people want out of their lives. But like I said, those 5 things are the things that I think are the biggest overwrapping around reasons why people end up getting stuck in their hometowns. What do you guys think though? Did any of these points remind you of a story to share from your own life? If so, then leave it in the comments. I'd love to read them. And if you're interested in content creation, entrepreneurship, and joining a community full of like-minded, self-driven individuals, then check out my school in the link below. I have a full course on how to grow a YouTube channel. I have weekly calls that we're doing. I try to answer any questions that you put in there. It's just a cool spot to be at if you want to grow and learn. So if you're interested, join while it's free. I'd love to have you in. Also, I haven't mentioned this yet, but I also have a Discord link. That's in the description below. It's a chill spot to talk about anything, but you can also also find me in there, and you also probably find my other links for my other channels and stuff down there. But I appreciate you guys a lot. Trust, I want to explain again with a final statement of escape isn't some myth. I think it's a strategy. Realistically, you just need to learn the rules, pick your vices carefully, and play the game instead of following it. That's the Lemming Theory. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.